Napoleon Bonaparte, a name synonymous with ambition, strategy, and ultimately defeat, started his life far from the gilded halls of power. Born Napoleon Bonaparte in 1769 on the rugged island of Corsica, his family were minor nobles, not major players in European politics. His early life was marked by this outsider status, a Corsican not fully French, fiercely intelligent and incredibly ambitious. This feeling of being on the periphery of having something to prove would drive him throughout his life. Even as a young man, Napoleon devoured books on history and military strategy. He excelled at mathematics and military school, graduating early and entering the French army just as the French Revolution was about to turn the country and Europe on its head. These tumultuous times provided the perfect opportunity for a young, ambitious officer to make his mark. Napoleon, with his sharp intellect and keen understanding of military tactics, was more than ready to seize his chance. The French Revolution was in full swing, the monarchy overthrown and France at war with its neighbors. It was a chaotic and dangerous time, but it was also a time of great opportunity. Napoleon, with his military training and his hunger for advancement, saw his chance and rose through the ranks with astonishing speed. He quickly gained a reputation as a brilliant strategist and a courageous leader, winning victory after victory for the fledgling French Republic. Napoleon's first major victory came at the Siege of Toulon in 1793. The city had fallen into British hands, and the revolutionaries were desperate to retake it. Napoleon, then a young artillery officer, devised a brilliant plan to recapture the city, bombarding the British fleet and forcing them to withdraw. This victory made him a hero of the Republic and launched his meteoric rise to power. Following Toulon, Napoleon was given command of the French army in Italy. The Italian campaign was a resounding success. Napoleon, with his smaller, more mobile army, outmaneuvered and outfought the Austrians time and again. His victories in Italy cemented his reputation as a military genius, and his popularity with the French people soared. They saw in him a strong leader who could bring stability and glory to France. It wasn't just Napoleon's military skill that won him admiration, it was also his charisma. He knew how to inspire his troops, how to appeal to their sense of patriotism and their desire for glory. His soldiers were willing to follow him anywhere, to face any danger, because they believed in him. Back in France, the government was in disarray. The Directory, the group of men ruling France, was corrupt and unpopular. Napoleon, with the support of the army and the people, saw his opportunity. In 1799, he staged a coup d'etat, overthrowing the Directory and establishing himself as first consul of France. He was just 30 years old. Napoleon's victories continued. At the Battle of Marengo in 1800, he defeated the Austrians once again, solidifying his control over Italy. But it was the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, often considered his greatest victory, that cemented Napoleon's legend. Against a larger Russo-Austrian force, Napoleon's tactical brilliance shone through. He outmaneuvered his enemies, predicting their movements and exploiting their weaknesses, leading to a decisive French victory. Napoleon wasn't just a conqueror, he was also a reformer. He implemented a new legal system, the Napoleonic Code, which standardized French law and is still the basis for legal systems in many countries today. He reformed the French education system and the Bank of France. He was a complex and contradictory figure, a military genius who also sought to modernize and improve the lives of his people. By 1804, Napoleon had declared himself Emperor of the French. He was no longer content with simply being the leader of France. He wanted to reshape the map of Europe. Over the next few years, Napoleon's armies marched from victory to victory. He defeated Prussia, Austria, and Russia in a series of lightning campaigns, redrawing the borders of Europe and installing his relatives and allies on the thrones of conquered nations. To challenge British naval dominance, Napoleon implemented the Continental System, a trade embargo against Britain. He hoped to cripple the British economy by cutting off their access to European markets. However, the Continental System backfired. It hurt the economies of France and its allies more than it hurt Britain, fueling resentment against French rule. Despite his military successes, Napoleon's ambition was sowing the seeds of his downfall. His constant wars and his insatiable desire for power had made him enemies across Europe. The other great powers, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, would not tolerate French hegemony forever. In 1808, Napoleon made a fateful decision. He invaded Spain, hoping to install his brother Joseph on the Spanish throne. However, he had underestimated the Spanish people. The Spanish War of Independence, or as Napoleon called it, the Spanish Ulcer, became a quagmire for the French. The Spanish people, aided by the British, waged a brutal guerrilla war against the French. Napoleon's armies, used to conventional warfare, were ill-equipped to deal with this new type of conflict. The Spanish campaign drained French resources and manpower, weakening Napoleon's hold on Europe. The Spanish Ulcer showed that Napoleon could be defeated. It also highlighted a key weakness in his empire: nationalism. The Spanish people were fighting for their homeland, their king, and their way of life. Napoleon had underestimated the power of nationalism, a force that would ultimately contribute to his downfall. Section 6. Disaster. In the East, the Russian campaign and the retreat from Moscow. In 1812, Napoleon embarked on his most ambitious and disastrous campaign, the invasion of Russia. He amassed the largest army Europe had ever seen, over 600,000 men, and marched on Moscow. The Russians, led by Tsar Alexander I, pursued a scorched earth policy, retreating deeper into Russia and burning everything they left behind. Napoleon captured Moscow, but it was a hollow victory. The city was largely deserted and in flames. The Russian winter set in, and with it came disaster. The French army, lacking supplies and adequate clothing, was decimated by the cold, starvation, and disease. Napoleon's retreat from Moscow became a desperate fight for survival. Of the 600,000 men who had marched into Russia, only a fraction returned. The Russian campaign was a turning point in Napoleon's fortunes. It shattered the myth of his invincibility and left his empire weakened and vulnerable. His enemies, emboldened by his defeat, sensed an opportunity to strike back. Section 7. The Fall from Grace, Leipzig, Exile, and the 100 Days. With Napoleon weakened, the tide turned against him. In 1813, he faced a coalition of European powers at the Battle of Leipzig, often called the Battle of Nations. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Napoleon was defeated and forced to retreat back to France. In 1814, Paris fell, and Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to the island of Elba off the coast of Italy. His empire was dismantled, and the Bourbon monarchy was restored in France. However, Napoleon's story wasn't over yet. In 1815, Napoleon escaped from Elba and returned to France. His former soldiers flocked to his banner, and he was once again proclaimed emperor. This period, known as the 100 Days, marked a brief resurgence of Napoleon's power. Section 8. Waterloo and the end of an era. Napoleon's final stand. Napoleon's return to power was short-lived. The other European powers, determined to prevent his resurgence, mobilized their armies. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon faced a combined British and Prussian force led by the Duke of Wellington at Waterloo in what would be his final battle. The Battle of Waterloo was a close-fought affair, but it ended in a decisive defeat for Napoleon. He was once again forced to abdicate and was this time exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. Napoleon spent the rest of his days on St. Helena, writing his memoirs and reflecting on his extraordinary life. He died there in 1821 at the age of 51. Section 9. The Napoleonic Legacy, Revolution, Reform, and the Shape of Modern Europe. Napoleon Bonaparte's impact on Europe was profound and lasting. He was a product of the French Revolution, but he also shaped its course. He spread the ideals of the revolution, liberty, equality, and fraternity across Europe, even as he crowned himself emperor. Napoleon's conquests led to the redrawing of the map of Europe, the spread of revolutionary ideas, and the rise of nationalism. His legal and social reforms left an enduring legacy, influencing legal systems and government structures to this day. Napoleon was a complex and contradictory figure, a brilliant military strategist, a ruthless conqueror, and a reformer who implemented lasting changes. He was a man of his time, shaped by the tumultuous era in which he lived. He was, in the words of one historian, the greatest man of action since Julius Caesar.